Hello friends, today we are going to analyze the game of Mikhail and John Hjartarson, which was played in 1987. So let's dive into it. The game starts with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5. The Rui Lopez is on the board, a6, the Murphy's defense. Bishop to Bishop to a4, knight to f6, castles, bishop to c7, rook to e1, b5, attacking the bishop, bishop to b3, and castles. Now in this position, Mikhail plays c3, well, to get the bishop into new diagonal. Not right now, but later. b6, h3, creating breathing room and avoiding the wind. Knight to a5, hitting the bishop, bishop to c2 and c5. d4, attacking the center, queen to c7, aligning queen with the bishop. Knight b to d2 and bishop to d7, developing a piece. Knight to f1, maneuvering the knight, and here exchange of pawns starts. E takes d4, c takes d4, and rook a to c8, hitting the bishop, and Tal defends it with knight to e3. And John plays knight to c6, and Mikhail attacks the knight with the pawn. So knight to b4 and bishop to b5. Now here John plays a5, Tal replies with a3, hitting the knight and telling knight to go back. So knight to a6, b4, g6, and bishop to d2, developing the final piece. So a takes b4 and a takes b4. Now here this knight is under attack, so John plays queen to b7, defending the knight, and bishop to d3, putting pressure on that pawn. Knight to c7 and knight to c2, defending the pawn further and trying to knight to h5 and bishop to e3, rook a8. Well, trade the rooks, queen to d2. Well, trade the rooks, but Mikhail says rook takes a8, and here Mikhail doesn't capture with the rook, but he captures with the knight. f5, striking in the center, and bishop to h6, hitting the rook, and John defends it with knight to g7. Knight to b3, maneuvering the knight, f4, closing the center, and knight to a5, hitting the queen, and queen to b6. Rook c1, well, controlling the open file. Rook to a8, trying to control this file. Queen to c2, putting pressure on the knight. Knight c to e8, and queen to b3. Bishop to f6, knight to c6, just maneuvering the pieces, and knight to h5. Queen to b2 and bishop to g7, trading the bishops. The bishop takes, and here John doesn't capture with any of the knight, but captures with the king. King takes g7, and in this position Mikhail plays rook to c5, sacrificing the rook. Let's see what happens if rook is accepted. D takes c5, takes f6. Here is Queen is under threat, so queen to a6. Knight takes d7 with check. Knight h to f6. Knight takes c5, hitting the queen. Well, these are all stockfish moves. Queen to a1, trading the queens, takes, rook takes, and king to h2. Now in this position you can see these pawns will be unstoppable, but this wasn't played. Here John played queen to a6, just getting away from the threat, and Mikhail captures the pawn. So rook takes b5 and knight to c7, hitting the rook, and rook to b8. Discovered attack to the queen and trying to grab the or trade the rooks. And but this bishop is unprotected, so it is a sacrifice. So don't accept the sacrifice, and in this position Mikhail plays knight takes e5, sacrificing another piece. And can you capture this knight? Let's see. He takes e5, queen takes e5 with check, then knight to f6, blocking the check. Queen to e7 check, king to h6, only move. Queen to f8 check, king to h5, the only move, and queen takes f6. Now this is unstoppable. The mate is unstoppable. So this knight cannot be captured. Instead, John played queen to d1 check. Only move is king to h2 and rook to a1. Checkmate the king, but it's a forced mate for the Mikhail Tal. Knight to g4 check. King to f7. Knight to h6 check. King to e7. Knight to g8 check. King to f7. And knight to g4 is check.